I've had some requests from viewers to look at some other PlayStation Vita games that are infamous or known to perform rather poorly on the device. So one of those games is The Amazing Spider-Man. This is actually a really good game, but it's plagued by slowdown and choppy frame rates, and it's quite inconsistent actually. So we're going to have a look at how we can improve the performance here using, I guess, some overclocking and potentially looking at some resolution tweaks as well. So I've actually played this a little bit, and it does perform quite poorly. I've played it on the handheld Vita, and I'm recording this with game capture on the PS TV, so we'll have a look at it here. So here we are in the game. I just got past the intro cinematic. Overclock, there is no overclock, everything's default, and we'll just have a look here, and it's just base form. Okay, so there's the frame rate up there.
I'll get you if these things get out of Oscorp.
I don't want to think about what
So we can see here it's not terrible. I mean, it's definitely choppy, and that's the problem. It's going up and down, up and down, up and down. And that's where you really get the shock from it. So let's set up the CPU here. We'll just leave everything else as default. Have a look. You know, it's still pretty choppy. At times we're getting down below 20. You can see here we're sitting at 20, rendering all this distance here. Let's put the GPU up a little bit here. So with the CPU max and the GPU max, it's up a bit. We're at 25 here, 26. And as I mentioned, you know, before, if we put this back to default, it's pretty bad. So this is the default here. You know, just this room here for an example. We're under 20 frames per second, super choppy. It's actually kind of nauseating to look at because it's so choppy. If we put the GPU up, it does a bit, maybe. Let's put the CPU up as well. So that's basically a max overclock there. And that's playable, I would say. We're sitting at, you know, over 30 typically. There is a bit of jump up and down. We're getting up to 40 there, up to 50 even. You know, there's a bit of slowdown when there was that explosion there, but it's playable here. So you can see here that the overclock is actually making a pretty big difference. There are times when it sits below 30, but generally speaking, that alone takes us up to a playable level. Okay, so here we are, stock Vita.
You okay?
I don't know.
So you can see it's pretty bad. Like basically almost unplayable. We're getting well below even 30. We're down to like 15 at times. Let's have a quick overclock here. Alright, so now we're overclocked and let's see.
Whoa! What is that? I'm gonna love this phone.
Okay, so with the overclock, you can see here it's definitely better. We're still dipping below 30, but we're never actually getting below 20. It's a little bit choppy though. It's playable, but it's jarring. It's significantly better than non-overclocked, but you know, it still has issues. We're on the ground, it's fine. But once we get up and we start swinging, you know, it starts to struggle a bit. Okay, so let's see what else we can do here. Perhaps we can change the resolution a bit, and that may actually improve the performance a little bit further. So if you have the modded Vita, you can go up here and you can run Vita Graphics Configurator. We scroll over here to the Amazing Spider-Man. We can go down here. Now again, this is the PS TV I'm playing on. You can play on the PS Vita. The game looks substantially better on the PS Vita than it does on Game Capture, obviously, because of the resolution. It actually looks quite good on the handheld itself, but you know, we can change this resolution here. We can come in here, we can change the FPS cap so it's smoother if we want. So we could set this to, for example, 30, so it's not going up and down all the time, which can be actually more jarring than, you know, just having lower resolution, lower frame rates. But let's go in here and we'll set an internal resolution that's a bit lower than the default. So what we can do in here is we can actually change the resolution by typing in exactly what we want it to be. So we can type in here the resolution that we want. Kobe, stop. Okay, so here we are, we have the resolution, and so this here is going to, in theory, set up 960 by 544 for most of the game, and then I think it helps prevent crashing in the menus when you have 1280 by 720 after that. So we'll run this here, and we'll hit Save Config, and then we'll go back to the game and see how it looks. Okay, so here we are, we have the resolution typed in here that we're going to want. 960 by 544. The second part of that helps with crashing in the menus because they potentially can be run at a different resolution and that can cause issues. So we'll go back to the game now and we'll see if everything works out okay. Now, of course, there are other resolutions you can try. You can go down even lower if need be. You need to make sure that the aspect ratio is correct, however. So you'll have to check out online some different options for that, but let's see how it looks here just a little bit lower. The PS Vita will natively output up to 1080i. Some titles on the handheld go to 720, so this is definitely lower in both cases than the native for the PS TV and for the PS Vita. So it will look a little bit softer and a little bit, I guess, blurry, but it should run technically a lot better, in theory at least. Okay, so here we are in game. We are swinging. We have the resolution turned down a bit.
Gwen, you okay?
No overclocking on, however.
I have to stay at Oscorp till we find an antidote. We can't risk spreading the infection to the outside.
I know someone who can help.
So it's still pretty bad.
Be careful, Pete. Dr. Smythe is programming his robots to capture all cross species. That may include you.
Let's turn that overclock back on.
Whoa! What is that? Huh. I think I'm
Okay,
gonna
so
love
here we
this
go. So
phone.
now we have the overclock on. Resolution has been tweaked, and let's see how it performs. There are some dips here and there, but this is definitely very playable. You know, we're sitting at 25 on average, I would say. There is a lot of up and down, but it's not unplayable by any means. So there you go. So there's a overclock that is definitely required regardless. So if you have an unmodded PS Vita, this title is pretty bad, to be honest. I would say unplayable on a standard PS Vita. If you have a modded Vita, however, and you can just overclock, it actually does approach playable. So here's one other thing I wanted to do is actually show you how the game looks on the actual Vita itself. This is a PS Vita 1000, the OLED model. Mainly because doing screen capture doesn't do it justice. I mean, the PS TV is going to be the less common way that people play this game, and it's obviously trying to upres the video and put it on the screen, so it's going to look blurry. And changes in FPS are much more apparent when you're playing on a big screen. On the handheld, it's not as bad. So let's just have a look here. Let's just make sure the overclock is off at first. So there we are. That's off. The resolution is on the lower resolution, that 544. So let's just have a look here.
As you can see, the creature has stopped its rampage in the center of the park. Now that we can...
So we can see here that we're under 20, but visually it doesn't look bad, as it's like with the lower resolution, it looks still really quite crisp. You know, we're sitting under 20. It's not jumping up and down that much. So it's not terrible even like this, but you know, this is also the low resolution. So let's do one more thing. Let's throw that overclock on. And let's see how it performs now. Set the overclock on there. So you can see it's definitely performing better. It's typically above 30 now. It's typically above 20, I mean, here. So not bad, but you can see it is still dipping down a little bit. It's going up and down. However, on the large screen in the game capture, it was quite jarring when the screen was going up and down constantly. Whereas here, you know, it's not nearly as bad on the Vita itself. The lower resolution looks still really nice. When the frame rate does dip down a bit, it's nowhere near as jarring on the handheld as it is on the screen. So, you know, in these cases, you don't have to say, okay, I always need to be at 30 frames per second no matter what. You know, it may just not be necessary. Yeah, so there we go. I mean, I just wanted to show it on the handheld how good it looks. On a totally stock Vita, to be honest, the game is not really that playable. I'd probably hesitate to pick this one up. However, if you have a modded Vita, which, let's be honest, you should mod your Vita, it's quite easy. At that point, the game becomes really nice, quite playable, and looks great. So.